First, I have to correct an error. I'm actually not a lawyer. I'm old enough to have gotten into the human rights business before you had to be a lawyer to do it. But I do fake it often. But I did really want to thank all of you, for speaking. And I know it's very hard, and but it's so meaningful to all of us. And I'm sure that everybody in this room feels distress for you and compassion and wants to help you. But access to help shouldn't depend on personal contact or that kind of direct compassion. There has to be some kind of a system to help as many people as possible who are facing the same kind of suffering, the same kind of pain. And that's where initiatives like the joint process are so important. And it's also where it's relevant to talk about a human rights framework for all of this. Of course, humanitarian principles and practices inspire a lot of these efforts, but international human rights law has a lot to say and should guide the response of the international. Oops, yeah?
Maybe it's better. It's on, yeah.
Is it? Yeah? Can everybody hear me better now? Okay. I was saying that humanitarian principles obviously inform the response of the international community to the issue of missing migrants, but international human rights law should also guide that response. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about the key rights issues that are involved here. Of course, the right to life is the most fundamental right of all, and all other rights derive from that. But the rights to freedom, to liberty and security, and the right to freedom from torture and cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment are key here. And all of those rights put together impose clear obligations on states, both to prevent those kinds of abuses, but also to investigate when a person disappears or dies on their territory or under their jurisdiction. And governments, of course, have this obligation regardless of the status of the victim. Right? So it doesn't matter if it's a person who doesn't have the right papers to be in that territory or in those waters. And of course, the duty to investigate is heightened when there's a chance that state actors were involved, but it applies in all situations. And it certainly doesn't matter that the death may have been caused in some way by the person's own behavior. And I know that sounds very blunt, perhaps too blunt, absolute, but it goes to the question that it does not matter that a person willingly got on a boat and then drowned. That does not absolve the state or all of us from a responsibility to find the truth about what happened and give that person a decent burial if possible, and help their families understand what happened. So here, that goes to the question of the right to a remedy, and that is basically the right to know the truth, the right for some kind of accountability and justice for a wrong that has occurred, been committed. And that means that states have to conduct effective, diligent investigations. And there has to be a framework for that, a framework for logging and documenting all possible information about missing or deceased persons, international networks to coordinate and share information that may be relevant to discovering the truth about a person who has disappeared or may have died. And of course, in those investigations, family members have a series of rights, above all the right to information, the right to participate in the investigation, and to be heard. There is thankfully now, perhaps more than ever, attention to the devastating loss of life and the number of missing migrants on the migration journeys. And I wanted to quote Agnes Kalamar, who is the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Executions, who issued last year a report on the deaths of migrants and refugees. And she concluded that report with a very strong statement that I'd like to read out. The frequent absence of investigations into these deaths is an additional worldwide violation of the right to life, contributing to an international regime of impunity, the invisibility of the violations and of their victims, and ill-informed policy making related to migration that may contribute to further deprivation of life. The international community is right now negotiating a global compact on migration, which does include the important objectives, really, of saving lives on the migration journey and coordinating international efforts on missing migrants. And I wanted to flag the details of those commitments, which will hopefully be adopted and then fully implemented by all signatories. So first and foremost is to improve search and rescue efforts. And of course here we've been talking a lot about deaths at sea, people going missing at sea. It's important also to recognize how many people are lost on land as well, including on the kind of journey that Bakari had to make to get to Libya and cross Libya itself. To establish transnational coordination channels and designate contact points for families looking for missing migrants, through which families can be kept informed on the status of the search and obtain other relevant information. Collect, centralize, and systematize data regarding corpses and ensure traceability after burial. And make all efforts, including through international cooperation, to identify and repatriate the remains of deceased migrants to their countries of origin, respecting the wishes of grieving families. These are all incredibly important commitments that really would give life to those obligations that derive both from humanitarian principles and from international human rights law. And the joint process inaugurated today is an important example of that kind of good faith coordination that is needed, that is vital to find those that are missing, to honor those who have died, and work towards policies that prevent these tragedies from occurring. Thank you.